Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway. Welcome back to Paris History Avec a Hemingway. I'm here with Claudine Hemingway, and today we are talking about Eugenie. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, but apparently she was Napoleon III's wife, and she was an advocate for the arts, and especially for women in the arts. So I'm going to let Claudine take it from here.
Yeah, you had it right. Eugenie's the future Empress Eugenie de Montijo. She was actually born May 5th, 1826, Cinco de Mayo.
Oh, wow.
She was born in Granada, Spain. And so her father, Cipriano, was the 8th Count of Montijo, and her mother, Maria Grevenet, was part French. Her father, Sapetahuge, as the Count of Montijo, he was a huge supporter of the French during the Napoleonic Wars, and which didn't sit very well with Spain. They weren't very happy about this guy basically supporting Napoleon, and Napoleon's trying to conquer all of Europe for his own. So they ended up getting exiled, and they had to leave, and they moved to Paris in 1834. So Eugenie was very small. She was only 8 years old. At the time, cholera was spreading all the way through France and Spain and all over Europe. And at the same time, it was the first Carlist War was starting in Spain. And so all of these things kind of combined together. It was a good time for them to leave. And so they went to France. But just before they left, and Eugenie watched a horrific murder right outside of their door at their house, and she was just 8 years old. And so it was kind of traumatizing. So the poor thing. And so they all took off and left for Paris. And so once they arrived in Paris, she was educated at the Convent de Sacré-Cœur. And so from 1835 to 1836, she was there. For the next year, she ended up going to the Gymnasium Normal, which was a very modern school where actually focused on physical activity, as you could tell by the name. And she really excelled at it, which I thought was funny because it's like they had recess, and she did running and jumping, and she did really good. But in 1837, she ended up being sent over to England to the Royal York Crescent School in Clifton, which is near Bristol, to go over there to learn English. And while she was there, she was, all the other kids and the boys made fun of her. She had very red hair. And so they all made fun of her and picked on her and called her the carrot.
Oh, I love redheads.
I know, poor little thing. So she decided that she would just had too much of this, and she was going to run away, and she was going to run away and go to India. And she got as far as the wharf.
She didn't get very far.
We didn't get very far. I think every little kid has done that. I did that. I actually did run away, but on my pony, and I didn't get very far. I got about a mile down the street, and a neighbor saw me. But yeah, I tried to figure out how to take my dollhouse, which was my prized possession that my grandpa made. I tried to figure out how to put my dollhouse on the back of my pony and run away.
This is adorable. I want pictures of that.
Yeah. So her father died on March 15th, 1839. He was just 54 years old. And she had her sister, who went by the name Paca, returned to Spain with their mother. So at this point, she had grown pretty headstrong, having to deal with the bullies and the people at school calling her a carrot. She kind of grew pretty headstrong, but she also had a lot of bouts with depression. She had, a few lost loves that she had fallen in love with, and, that didn't work out. And actually, had tried to kill herself twice.
Oh, gosh. Wait, how old was she?
Just a teenager.
Oh, emotions.
Yeah. Poor thing. So good thing there was no social media back then.
Yeah, seriously. Wow.
Yeah, but she started to take a real interest in politics pretty early on. And she ended up meeting this woman named Eleanor Gordon, who would later be one of her husband's many mistresses. But through Eleanor, she developed this real big interest in the Bonapartes and in basically all their ideas and everything they stood for. So at 23 years old, her mother took her, went back to Paris, and her mother took her to Élysée Palace. And at the time, she met Louis Napoleon there on April 12th, 1849. He at the time was the president of the Republic. And so he was instantly smitten by her gorgeous looks. And she was very young and very beautiful. And so for more than 2 years, he chased after her. And every time she kind of just pushed him off, pushed him away. He'd send her letters, and she just kind of, didn't really welcome any of his advances. Well, after 2 years, he finally wore her down.
Oh, he liked redheads too.
He did. He liked anything. He had quite the libido at the time. I think he liked anything that walked. But finally, on January 22nd, 1853, in front of the Council of State and the legislative body, he actually announced his intention to marry her. At first, everybody completely freaked out because she didn't come from court, and she she wasn't a high-ranking member of a European royalty or a family. And so a lot of people were really against it, but Napoleon stood really firm and said that, he was in love with her and he was going to marry the Spanish girl. And so on January 29th, 1853 at 8 p.m. in the Salle de Marot in the Tuileries, they had a civil ceremony and sealed the deal.
Sealed the deal. Was the uncle in the bedroom? They had
no, but that's the whole bedroom part's a whole other thing. But the next day they had a huge ceremony in Notre Dame du Paris, of course. It was just a few weeks before that, Napoleon had held the big Te Deum mass at Notre Dame, and he, at the time, Viollet-le-Duc was doing all of his work trying to restore Notre Dame, and he had to stop all of this to get this all, get it Notre Dame presentable at the time for a mass. And so Napoleon thought it was he did such a great job with it that he wanted him to do it again. And he wanted to do it a few weeks later for this, wedding ceremony. And so Viollet-le-Duc is just like, oh, great. Now, stop everything again. He basically, it was in such bad, like it was almost falling down on the inside, like things. So he ended up having to cover everything. They had light blue silk made that had golden stars embroidered on it. The columns had to be wrapped with red velvet. Basically, the whole entire interior had to be like covered because it looked so bad. But it looked gorgeous when he did this. It had like 13,000 candles in it, and it was gorgeous. So
we need him now.
I know. Yeah. So there's the new Viollet. Yeah. I think his name Pierre. I have a huge crush on him. But he, so he had to do all of this. He asked him on January to do this for the January 30th, 1853 wedding, which is just, the anniversary was just not that long ago. So he had to do this again. And so Viollet-le-Duc was, of course, annoyed. He had to end up doing this again for him when they ended up having a child. But Viollet-le-Duc had completely had to redo the whole facade too. He created this huge Gothic portico that was, created out of wood. They added statues of Charlemagne and his uncle Napoleon Bonaparte, as well as 4 huge eagles that basically looked down on people as they walked into the church.
That sounds epic.
I know it sounds pretty epic, but when the poor guy is trying to restore this cathedral, and you've got your Napoleon III coming in all the time, we're like, wait, stop. Okay, now I need you to do this. And I'm sure it wasn't easy. Yeah.
He just needs thousands of candles and a little bit of velvet. No problem.
I know, just a little bit of velvet. I'm sure that was like great. And they just had a storeroom, like pull it all out. But it was like there was carpet, they redid this. They brought in special carpets and flags and canopies and they were all covered with the golden Napoleonic bee on everything. And so for when they got married, the city of Paris offered her a set of diamonds. It's this beautiful necklace that was covered with diamonds. And she declined it and said, no, I don't want it. The money should be given to build a school and to help the poor. So they acknowledged her request. And so they actually ended up building an orphanage in the Faubourg Saint-Antoine. And it would be inaugurated 3 years later in 1856. And it was named the Maison Eugenie Napoleon. And it was actually constructed and built into the shape of a necklace.
Oh, wow. Is it still existing?
I don't think so. I don't think it's still around anymore. But it actually, had this curved, so basically it looked like a necklace.
That's cool. She was a good person.
Yeah, she was pretty good. But up until the wedding, of course, nothing physical happened between them. And so on their wedding night, of course, they had to, seal the deal on the wedding. And it was said that she thought the whole entire thing was disgusting and she never wanted to do it again.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Uh-oh. So Napoleon III, he was quite the randy guy. He's known for just about sleeping with every courtesan and anybody else in Paris at the time. And so for about 6 months, he stayed on the straight and narrow, because he had this new wife, which, I think that he did, I think he did actually love her. But after 6 months, he couldn't take it any longer. And he searched out for other, greener pastures. But she knew about this. And so then it just upset her even more. So, but of course, her role is to produce an heir to the throne. So she finally said, okay, they would sleep together, but with only for the intent of her getting pregnant. And that was it.
So sexy.
I know, really sexes up the whole monarchy. So she actually ended up having a few miscarriages, poor thing, because then she's probably like, great, I got to do this again. So, but on March 16th, 1856, after being in labor for 2 days.
No.
Which I'm sure added to the I'm never doing this again. He ended up giving birth to their only child, Napoleon Eugene Louis Jean Joseph Bonaparte.
Well, at least she had a boy.
I know that she's probably like, thank goodness. But she and her son almost died during labor. It was so bad.
Eesh, poor thing.
Yeah. And then at that point she said that she would never have sex with him again. And I don't think she did.
She became a nun afterwards.
Yeah. She was like, I gave you the air. This is what you get. Don't get near me.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So she focused a lot of her time after that, of course, on her son, but then also creating these huge parties and balls in the Tuileries, because that's where they were, they spent much of their time and taking care of her son. And, he was out all over the place doing whatever he was doing, but she didn't really care at this point. While their intimate relationship had gone, they were very close. And she was really involved in a lot of the decisions he was making. He used her, he was a very trusted advisor when he decided he wanted to completely, finish the grand projet of the Louvre. She was involved in a lot of the decisions of, what they were doing and building and looking at the blueprints and stuff. So they were still very close. They weren't going to be getting it on anytime soon.
Lucky her that he didn't really care.
Yeah, yeah. He would end up, he would have her go do different things. Like she even went down to the opening and dedicated the Suez Canal. So she kind of was out there, she wasn't just staying back in the castle,
Mm,
with their
yeah, I mean,
twiddling her thumbs.
sounds like a bad life.
I know, not a bad life, but she was also involved in the Saint-Simon movement, which is we talked about when we talked about the dear, wonderful Rosa Bonheur. Her father was a part of that, so she got really involved in that. She kind of she forced the Ministry of National Education to give girls the chance to obtain the baccalaureate and even get diplomas. And she tried to get George Sand into the Académie Française, but that did not happen. That was a
That
step too far.
bombed.
Yeah, but she was successful in getting Rosa Bonheur the Legion of Honor award, but Napoleon III, of course, wasn't very pleased with it. He finally okayed it, but only under the stipulation that there was no sort of ceremony for it, and he wanted to have absolutely nothing to do with it, and it basically had to be this kind of quiet, hidden thing that happened. And she actually ended up going out to the Chateau de Bay, where Rosa was living, and actually presented her with the medal there.
Mm.
So she was very, she's very interested in women and women in the arts and stuff. She also was a lover of anything that had to do with Marie Antoinette or Josephine. She was kind of obsessed with them. She basically modeled all of the homes that they would redecorate off of the Marie Antoinette style. And in 1861, Napoleon III ended up buying the Chateau de Malmaison, which was where Josephine had lived. He was also, that was his grandmother. They were, Napoleon III is the nephew of Napoleon Bonaparte, who was married to Josephine, whose daughter ended up marrying somebody, and then they had a son, and that was Napoleon III. Did you keep up with that?
I always get my Napoleons mixed up. I have no idea how you keep track of that. I
think most Americans think that there was only one Napoleon, and it was just the short guy.
Yeah, definitely. I would say so.
Yeah.
There was a lot of Napoleons, and it's very confusing.
Yeah, there was a lot. But in 1854, he also ended up purchasing a large piece of property in the sand dunes of Biarritz, and he built a really huge villa there. It was the Villa Eugenie. Excuse me. He ended up so that she could be, she still missed her Spanish roots and being able to be back in Spain. And so he built this big chateau so she could be a little bit closer and get a little taste of that. When the Franco-Prussian War broke out, Napoleon and her son went to the German front to join the soldiers, but the defeats were endless. He didn't do a very good job, and his army behind him they were very outmatched by the Prussian. Eugenie was staying back in Paris, and so she actually was helping take over his seat in the government and was basically working with the generals and telling them what to do. She served as his regent when he was gone. And one day he sent her a letter saying that he was going to come back to Paris, to which she quickly responded to a message and told him that he needed to stay because if he fled, it would look very bad and would cause a revolution. So he kept losing and turned himself into the Prussians.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and when she heard this, when word got to Paris on September 3rd, Eugenie was livid, saying he should have just killed himself because it was a huge dishonor to France that, here he is, the, emperor of France and the leader, and he turned himself in.
I love that she was like, he should have just killed himself.
He should have just killed, like, how embarrassing.
I don't know him.
I could just picture her like in her huge, hoop skirt, just being like, you should have just killed yourself.
Oh my God. Brutal.
Brutal, yeah. So but then the crowd stormed the Tuileries, and she ended up having to escape. She and her son's, her son wasn't there. She snuck out through a window and was basically running barefoot until she went to her American dentist, Thomas Evans, where he ended up safely getting her to Deauville and getting her onto a British ship and sent to England.
Her American dentist
Yes.
snuck her out?
Yeah, so she had a dentist who was American living in France. And so she ran to him and he ended up getting her out of there. Meanwhile, Napoleon III is, caught up and he's in, captive. And her son, they eventually were able to get away. And they also came to England. And her son actually died in 1879. And he was fighting in the Zulu War of South Africa and was killed while he was there. Napoleon, he would also died. And so poor Eugenie was just over in London by herself, while France was just basically, falling apart. So she was really close with Queen Victoria. And so she stayed with her when she was in England. She ended up actually purchasing a villa there and also a villa in the south of France. And while she was there, she continued to support and donate to French and English hospitals and to orphanages, trying to support them. But, they weren't going to welcome her back with loving arms back into France.
Yeah, so the money, was she like cut off from the money once they were basically like, everybody wasn't happy with them, but they still getting money from the people?
They had family money that she
Yeah.
had. So, and Napoleon III, I'm sure he had some money, but they basically tried to take all of that stuff and homes and everything else when, there's been so many kings and rulers that are just like, yep, I'm out of here.
They're gonna kill me.
Yeah. I mean, she was terrified that she was constantly in fear of her life ending like Marie Antoinette's.
It sounds like she was a little too obsessed with her, like her life followed along a little bit there.
Yeah, I think maybe she should have kept an eye on the entire history of Marie Antoinette, not just the Hollywood version most people know today. I think they should have maybe looked at some of the political and other parts of it.
Yeah, I think she should have made a vision board of a happier ending.
Exactly. Yeah, a little vision board there at the time out of magazine.
Lots of beheading. She was like going a little hard on that, envisioning that.
Yeah. But in 1920, she was 94 years old.
What?
She had gone back to Spain, to see some family, and she died.
She lived to be 94.
And almost 50 years after Napoleon III died.
Wow. 94. That's such a long time.
Yeah, she was buried at St. Michael's Abbey in Farnborough in England, which is where her husband and her son are also buried.
Wait, they're all buried in England?
Yeah. There's been talk. There's the St. Augustine Church, which we'll have to do on one of our live walks because the church is absolutely stunning. It's over in, I believe it's the 8th. It was built under Haussmann, and it was supposed to be basically Napoleon wanted it built so it would be where their tombs would be. But after they were exiled and they went to live in England, they obviously never, their mortal remains never returned. But there's a lot of talk every once in a while. You see things that people are talking about trying to get them back and bring them back over and buried in France.
Yeah, because usually France is pretty obsessed with bringing the dead bodies back.
Yeah,
they kicked Napoleon I out and then wanted his body back. So,
Yeah, it happens. But when you look at, some of the little things in Paris still, like the Opera Garnier, which is one of the most beautiful buildings in Paris, it was built under Napoleon III, of course. And so if you look on the outside of the buildings, you see the letter E a lot, and that's for Eugenie.
Oh, I love that. That's my favorite building in Paris.
Yeah,
it's so
gorgeous. And then if you want to see anything even more gorgeous is to go to the Louvre. And it's now they've redid the Galerie des Palais. They did a huge restoration about last January, I believe it reopened. They did an amazing job on it, but that's where also the crown jewels of France are. the some of the pieces that were owned by Eugenie actually used to be just right outside of the apartments, which I'll talk about in a second. But now they're all in the Galerie d'Apollon, and there's like a beautiful diamond and pearl tiara. And this is because this is all after the revolution. So these things survived. There's like a emerald and diamond tiara and her crown, and they're stunning.
I'm so glad she lived a long time. She was a good person.
Yeah, she lived a long time. Yeah, even though she told her husband he should have killed himself.
Yes. I mean, I feel like a lot of wives feel that way about their husbands sometimes.
Oh, I'm sure everyone has thought that at the moment.
You should have killed yourself. I wonder if she ever had sex again. I mean, she seemed like not a fan.
I think it was at the first time, and she was like, "Yeah, I didn't enjoy that. That was not good. Never." It's like my mom, where she was like, "I had a screwdriver one time, and I didn't like it, and I didn't like the taste of the vodka, and I never drank again."
I mean, she put all that sexual energy into saving children and women. So
I know she did. She did good. But today, another thing in the Louvre, you could go in there and see the amazing Napoleon III apartments. A huge misconception is everybody thinks that's where he lived. It used to be actually the Ministry of Finance, or it was the Ministry of Finance. But when he's basically that whole side of the Richelieu wing was done under Napoleon III. It was started by his uncle. He didn't get it finished. And so Napoleon III actually is the one who did more for the Louvre that we see today than anybody else in history. But the Napoleon apartments, the Napoleon III apartments are just absolutely stunning. And I would love to live there in a second. But it was built under Napoleon for the minister, Kiel, and it was opened up, and they had this huge lavish ball there in 1861. And so later on, it ended up being the Ministry of Finance offices until the 1980s.
Oh, wow. That's a long time.
And so in 1985, they basically kicked all those guys out, and they went up to Bercy, and basically they took it over for the Louvre. And it was went under from 1985 to 1993. They did a huge renovation and restoration on it. And it finally opened just in 2000. Like, that's not that long ago.
It's only like 20 years.
Yeah, but Napoleon, it was never like that. It's just basically named after he and Eugenie, but they never lived there, of course, because it wasn't done until long after they had died. It's still pretty fascinating. It's done in the Second Empire style, which is actually very close to the Louis XIV style, which everything is gold and gilded and, lots of red velvet. My dream come true, basically. So it is pretty stunning to go see and get an idea of thinking what life would have been like, but they never actually lived there.
Yeah, that's my favorite part of the Louvre. I always tell people if they want to skip the lines of going out to Versailles and all that, just go to the Napoleon wing of the Louvre, because it's
the whole Richelieu wing is the perfect, because that's my very favorite. You have you have not only the Napoleon III apartments, but then you also have the Salle de Médicis, which is the 24 paintings by Rubens of the life of Marie de Médicis, who we've also talked about before. But it's hardly anybody goes into the Richelieu wing, because they all go to the Denon and they go see Mona Lisa and they take a bunch of selfies and then they leave.
Yeah, definitely. I've heard a couple of people say, like, why don't they just move the Mona Lisa into like her own building outside of the Louvre? And that way we can get rid of all the people that just want a selfie with the Mona Lisa.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of exhibition. They have a bunch of different exhibition parts where they put on different, special exhibitions during, in the Louvre. And I've thought that too. Like, why don't they just put her in one of those? You can manage the crowd in and out, because when she had moved, when they were really redoing the room where she's been in, she hasn't always been where she is right now. She used to just be on the wall in the Grand Gallery, and nobody really cared till she got stolen. But they moved her over to the Salle de Médicis, which I hated, because that was my little secret oasis. I loved going to that room. Then all of a sudden they moved her from the Denon to the Richelieu. It turned into just an absolute nightmare. But they had an article that came out saying the Louvre has discovered 70% of the people that come to the Louvre come to see the Mona Lisa. And I was like, yeah, no shit. I could have told you that without an article.
Yeah, they just need to put her in another building and just let people do their thing. So that way the people that just want to enjoy the Louvre can just enjoy the Louvre.
But it was great. I mean, that period of time when she wasn't in the Denon, like that's, I didn't go anywhere near Richelieu because they had all these crazy lines and, you had to do one line to get to the escalator and then another line. And then you got to the top and it was just crazy how they put it together to help manage the amount of people. But then nobody was in the Denon wing. It was like fantastic.
So you just basically have to avoid the Mona Lisa and then you have the Louvre to yourself.
Yeah. So when people say like, oh, I don't want to go there because it's, and I love the Louvre more than anything in the world. So when people say, oh, it's just too overwhelming, like, no. It's like there's only like a very small percentage of it that makes it horrible.
Yeah, because it's so huge. It's like a country inside there. Like you can find a way to not see people. Just go to the other wings.
Oh, for sure. You could go. There's times that I'm there for 3 hours before I see a person.
Yeah, definitely. When you go up into like some of the portrait galleries and stuff, you just find the security guys sleeping.
Oh yeah, they're playing on their phone or. But yeah, they used to have her jewelry just kind of at the end of the hall after you exited, where you walk down the hall and you could look in this window to get a big opening to look into the dining room of the apartments. And at the end of the hall, that's where they used to have her jewelry, as long with a lot of porcelain and other things that she had. But they moved all the jewelry to the Apollo Gallery, and it's just absolutely gorgeous in there.
Well, now you're making me wish everything was open. I told Giuseppe this summer, I was like, we need to go to the museums. There's no tourists and they're going to close them again. He's like, we need to find jobs. And I'm like, all right. And now I'm like, we should have just went. Oh.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing for me is not being able to be inside the Louvre for hours.
I hope they open all the museums again soon, but we should see.
They will.
Yeah, they will. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to us again. Paris History, Avec, Hemingway with Claudine Hemingway. Don't forget to check out her website for more information, for links to her books, photos. She does private tours as well. If you want to do virtual tours with her during this time to learn more about all of this, she is available. And we can't wait to talk to you next week.
And our live walks.
Every Sunday. Check out La Vie Creative on Facebook or Bleu Blanc Rouge on Facebook, and you can find information about our live history tours on Zoom.
Thank you for listening to Paris History Avec a Hemingway. If you want to find out some more, you could always find me on my Instagram page, Claudine Bleu Blanc Rouge, and that's BLEU, as in the French way to spell it. And each day I post a daily history lesson about a person or a place or something in Paris, or it's lots of fun facts. And then also at ClaudineHemingway.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter there.